Hello, it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe on Bookstagram. Today I'm going to be doing a Heartless Hunter summary. And just a reminder, these are going to be full of spoilers. So if you have not read and you don't want it spoiled, don't continue. But we're going to be just jumping right in. First and foremost, Rune is the main character. She's a young witch in a world where witches are hunted and executed by the Republic's notorious Blood Guard. Rune was orphaned at a young age, and Nan took her in as her adopted granddaughter. She was a wealthy ship merchant and a witch. Rune and her Nan planned to escape during the Revolution, but the Republic found out about their plan. Rune's best friend, Alex Sharp, informed her that the Blood Guard was waiting for them at the harbor to apprehend them, so Nan told Rune to save herself and turn her in, so that Rune would be spared. After realizing that this was the only way, Rune did turn Nan in and she was captured and killed. Rune was then deemed an important aider of the revolution for the betrayal, and the Republic gifted her with all of Nan's assets in exchange for helping them by turning her in. All of her assets included like her house, her shipping business, all of her ships, everything like that. Before being captured, though, Nan told Rune to find her old friend, Seraphine Oakes, who was exiled many years ago. So 2 years later, which is present day in this book, Rune tracks down Seraphine's house, and when she approaches, she sees torn clothes and an X of blood on the door, informing her that Seraphine was captured by the Blood Guard, and she was too late. So Rune races to the opera theater in the city and tries to find information on where Seraphine is being kept. She meets up with her best friends, Verity and Alex, both of whom know she's the infamous Crimson Moth who's been freeing witches, and some other friends who aren't aware of her alter ego. One of her friends, Noah, says another witch was taken tonight by Blood Guard member Gideon Sharp, who is Alex's older brother. We switch between Rune and Gideon's point of view in this book. So in Gideon's point of view, we see that he doesn't like the excess violence taken against witches, but he still takes his job seriously. He's on the trail of the Crimson Moth and heads to the opera for more information. So Rune emerges from an alcove with Alex and runs right into Gideon. She tries to flirt with him to get information on Seraphine's whereabouts, but he is not impressed at all. And then a female associate of his approaches, and he ends up leaving with her. So the girl that Gideon leaves with is named Harrow, and she is missing an ear. I don't know if that's important to the story, but she tells him that witches' signatures were found on one of Rune's cargo ships and urges him to court her to see if he can get any information out of her. He doesn't think Rune is a witch, especially not the Crimson Moth, but he agrees to court her. Witches need blood to use their magic, but cutting themselves leave witches' marks that show up as like silver scars, and witches used to turn them into like tattoos of sorts. But to remain undetected, Rune uses blood from her cycle to perform magic. Verity's two older sisters were witches and were killed after her mother turned them into the Blood Guard. At Rune's party, she decides it's time to find a suitor and a husband whose status will grant her information into captured witches' whereabouts. She's about to ask a potential suitor for a dance, but Gideon shows up and apologizes for his earlier behavior and asks if she'll give him a tour of the grounds. Alex sees them together and is clearly not a fan of their interaction since he loves and cares about both Rune and Gideon, and he knows they're likely using each other for information and knows that it can't end well. So Rune gives Gideon a tour, and he reveals that while Alex went away to school, the rest of his family went to live at the palace as personal seamstresses to the witch queens to get money for Alex's schooling. Shortly before the revolution, their sister died from a sickness, and then their parents drowned in a swimming accident. Alex and Gideon then killed all 3 witch queens in their sleep, and Rune believes that these events are somehow connected. The youngest witch queen was named Cressida, and it's alluded to that she and Gideon had some sort of relationship. Gideon and Rune then have a moment and they almost kiss, so Rune spills wine on him as a distraction and he leaves. The next day, Rune heads to Verity's dorm, and she uses Verity's old cycle blood to perform a lock-picking spell, but it doesn't work because the blood is old and Rune ends up fainting from overexertion. Rune recalls getting her first cycle at Alex's 16th birthday party, and witches bleed black, so that marked her as a witch. She was in the bathroom crying because she didn't know she was a witch. She was orphaned, and Alex came in to help her. Rune thought he was going to turn her into the guards, but he just came back with new clothes and tea and told her that she could always trust him. Verity, Rune, and Alex try to figure out how to use new blood without having Rune cut herself because that leaves casting marks. In this world, magic has different classifications. There's mirages, which are illusion spells. Menorah spells change the material world, so like locking or unlocking, and they're more challenging, so they require fresher blood. Also, borrowing blood freely can make the spell stronger. Then Arcana spells require blood that was taken from someone else against their will, and these are the strongest spells, but they were outlawed a long time ago. Alex offers to have his fresh blood used for spells, but Rune is hesitant because then he'll have the silver casting scars, and he could get in trouble for aiding a witch if they're found. Noah, who is, one of those friends from earlier, is having a ball the next night, and Rune plans on sneaking into his mother's office, who is the warden, to trace a map of the jail so she can free Seraphine. Alex says he'll only help her if she agrees to take a break from being the Crimson Moth and spend a month with him in Caelise, which is the capital of a peaceful kingdom called Umbria. He says that he's heading there for a month, and she agrees to 2 weeks, not 1 month. Gideon sends Rune a letter letting her know that he has a solution for her problem of not having a dress for a correspondence dinner that she was invited to, and asks her to meet him the next morning. Alex confronts Gideon, and they end up getting in a fight, which results in Alex storming off. Rune goes to Gideon's house, and he takes her measurements for the dress. She has to strip down to her undergarments for the measurements, and she realizes that this was probably just a ploy for him to look for witch scars on her. And at the end of their encounter, they share another one of these moments, and she asks him to go to the ball with her. But he says that he's making a transfer from the old mine to the prison that night, and doesn't know if he will make it. Gideon confirms that he was once Cressida's lover. Their attraction was immediate and mutual, but he ominously alludes to being trapped in her web and eaten alive after she showed her true colors. Gideon tells Harrow that Rune has no casting scars, and Harrow says that they could have been under her undergarments, and she tells Gideon that he needs to get her truly naked to see if she has any scars. He says he might not need to because he gave her bad information this morning, and he wants to see if she'll act on it. Rune shows up to the supposed holding cell with an invisibility spell and falls right into Gideon's trap. He captures her in one of the lower levels of the old mine, but it's too dark to see her, so he lights a flare and has to let go of her to remove her hood, so she uses the opportunity to stab him and run further into the mine. So now that she's out of his grasp, she still has the invisibility spell intact, and she reaches a dead end filled with water, and she's about to be cornered, so she ducks into the water, and that's going to wash the spell off, but she just waits for the light of the flare to recede before she comes back up. But when she does come back up, she's immediately grabbed. Gideon still can't see her in the dark, but asks if she wants to be dragged out or walk out freely in chains. She doesn't answer, so he loosens his grip slightly, and she uses that opportunity to push him back in the water, but he doesn't let go of her, and they both tumble back into the water. So in the shock of hitting the freezing water, Gideon lets go of her, and she climbs up the ladder and flees. She reaches the first level, and she's trapped between Gideon on one side and then the guard named Layla, who's stationed outside the door. Gideon calls for Layla and says that the moth is inside, so as Layla opens the door, Rune flees and closes the door behind her and uses her weight to keep it closed. She needs to use that deadbolt spell, but she's not strong enough with her old blood. So she pulls the knife and uses Gideon's fresh blood, even though it might corrupt her since the blood wasn't given freely. But the spell works immediately with the fresh blood. Gideon and Layla are trapped inside, so they break a window to get out. They shoot her and the bullet grazes her. Gideon tells Layla to head to the docks because if Rune is the moth, she'll obviously be fleeing. And then Gideon is going to head to the ball because if Rune isn't the moth, she'll be there unaware that the old mine was a trap. And he says that if she is at the ball, he'll arrest her for treason. Rune shows up at the ball and sees Alex and Noah and pretends she's been there all along. Rune and Alex go to the warden's office to trace the map, and she tells Alex everything that happened in the mine. Alex says he's going to Caelise for good, not just for a month, and he wants her to come with him. She says she doesn't deserve to go and be free after she gave her grandmother up. Her wound from that bullet graze starts to bleed through her gloves, and Alex helps her rebandage it, but she takes Verity's gloves to hide the bandage. Gideon shows up and sees another girl who runs in Rune's circle named Caroline, and she makes a comment to Gideon saying that she hopes everything went smoothly, which Gideon thought was weird because he doesn't know what she's talking about. But then Rune approaches him and acts like nothing is wrong, saying she's glad that he made it, and asks for an update on the transfer. She says she told the girls at Carolyn's luncheon and wants to update them. Gideon then realizes that the information could have leaked to anyone, and now he can't arrest Rune because he isn't certain that it was her. Alex shows up and escorts her out. Rune plans on putting a truth teller spell in Gideon's suit jacket since she couldn't put it on his wine glass because he doesn't drink anymore. Alex tells Rune he'll see what information he can get out of Gideon regarding the prison and where Seraphine is being kept. Rune receives a package from Gideon with her dress for the Luminaries correspondent dinner, and it's beautiful. She telegrams him and asks him to be her date, and he accepts. He shows up to her house and asks to go on a walk. They end up getting in an argument about class, and Gideon says that Rune looks down on him and says he isn't good enough for her. She says that she feels the opposite, saying he sees her as superficial and doesn't think she'll be good enough for him. She storms off, and Gideon runs after her and confides in her about Cressida. He says that he became Cressida's lover and that she turned evil, making him do things and then punishing him when he disobeyed. He said that the queens use the blood of others against their will, and Rune says that that's impossible because it was outlawed because it makes the witches corrupt. Gideon says that he saw it with his own eyes. He says that the queens tortured his mother and killed his sister when he couldn't satisfy Cressida. After his sister died, his mother drowned herself and his father hung himself. That's when he allied himself with Noah's dad and killed the queens in their sleep, leading to the uprising. Alex killed Cressida to spare Gideon from having to do it himself because he once loved her and still kind of did. Gideon begins taking off his clothes to go swimming and asks Rune to join. Rune knows he's asking because he wants to inspect her for witches' marks again, but knows that he won't find any because she doesn't have any. So they go swimming in the lake, and Rune tells him it was hard to turn in her nan, Kestrel Winters, and Gideon says that it's not a crime to love a witch. She kisses him, but he pulls back when he hears his brother's voice in his head saying that he's not good enough for her. Rune misinterprets this as rejection and swims away to shore. Gideon follows her and apologizes, and she asks him to come inside, but he says that he has to go home because he promised that he'd take things slow. Harrow tells Gideon that witches' marks are showing up all around town, and there is talk of another uprising in favor of the witches because people are not happy with the New Republic since they have not been given what they were promised. The Tasker brothers, who are particularly vicious Bloodguard officers, haven't showed up for their shift, and when Gideon goes to track them down, he finds them dead. Verity accompanies Rune to the Luminaries dinner as her guest, and while they're getting ready, Rune asks if the sister queens used arcana magic, and Verity gets defensive and a little unhinged while denying this, and then accidentally hurts Rune. At the dinner, they bring out a hooded witch to be purged as entertainment, and they ask Rune to do the honors. The witch is unhooded, and it's Seraphine, who looks much younger than she should be, and she snarls at Rune and says that she disgusts her for what she did to Kestrel. Rune tries to think quickly in order to save her and plans to create an illusion of fire as a distraction, but before she can, actual Black Witch's fire breaks out and is coming right towards them, and Seraphine is able to get away in time. Gideon finally arrives and saves Rune from the fire, but it's clear that Rune was the target of the spell. Verity finds Rune again and tells her that they have to leave, and Gideon kisses Rune right in front of Verity. After they leave, Layla and Gideon find Cressida Roseblood's witch's mark under the kitchen table, which should be impossible since she's supposed to be dead. Gideon attends Alex's going away card party, and Alex convinces Gideon to put up his prison access coin when he runs out of money, and then Alex ends up winning that coin. When they're alone, Gideon tells Alex that he thinks Cressida is alive, and Alex says that he'll alert Rune in the morning because of Gideon and Cressida's past, and then Gideon's ties to Rune now. Gideon notices a pale spot on Alex's finger where his parents' ring used to be, and remembers Harrow telling him that a man with a poor man's wedding band was seen putting last-minute cargo on Rune's ship that was found with a witch's mark. Gideon shrugs this off because he thinks that there's no way Alex could aid witches after what they did to their family. Alex goes to Rune's house and tells her about Cressida and confesses that he never actually killed her. He says that he wanted to, but knew killing witches wasn't the answer, so he fired 3 rounds into the ceiling as Cressida fled into the woods. Rune tells Alex not to tell a soul because that could get him killed. Gideon receives a tip about witches gathering at an old print shop, so him and the other Blood Guard officers went to raid it, but they found it empty except for candles, blood markings, and Cressida's witch's mark. It was a trap, and then the building explodes. Rune sees the news about the attacks, leaving 37 dead, and she rushes to the scene trying to find Gideon, and then she can't find him, so she goes to his house and still can't find him. She's fearing the worst at this point, and she starts to cry, just as Gideon walks up. She's relieved, and he takes her inside, and they end up sleeping together. They spend multiple days together and plan their lives together when they admit that they love each other. After a couple days of this, Harrow and Layla show up to tell Gideon that the print shop owner sketched the young woman who approached him about renting out that shop, and it looks a lot like Verity, Rune's friend. They're badgering Gideon about Rune, and he tries to protect her by playing off the relationship and says that he was using her the whole time, saying that the sex didn't mean anything, and Rune overhears everything and flees to Alex's house. When she gets there, Alex asks if she's okay, and he finally plucks up the courage to tell her that he loves her and wants her to come to Kaylis with him for good and marry him. He kisses her, and she doesn't feel the same spark that she does with Gideon, but feels that something could develop eventually. She agrees to go to Kaylis and to marry him. Their plan is to free Seraphine using Gideon's coin and then stow her away on the ship with them. She gets a letter from Gideon explaining everything with these hand-sewn buttercups, and she agrees to meet him, to give him the flowers back, and also come clean about the engagement. When she leaves to go, she doesn't have her blood vial or the prison coin in her uniform jacket, so she thinks Verity must have switched jackets with her on accident. So she goes to her dorm, and when she opens the door, she only sees a broom closet. She's obviously confused and goes to the front desk, but the woman tells her there's no student by the name of Verity. She's running late, so she can't think too much on this, and she goes to meet Gideon. When she sees Gideon, he's very cold to her, and he appears disheveled and unshaven. He reveals the coin and the blood vial, saying he tried to apologize in person last night, but found those items instead. He asks Rune if any of their relationship was real. He knows she's the Crimson Moth, and when she tries to flee, Layla and a dozen other Blood Guard soldiers are at the door waiting for her with pistols. As they're searching her, Layla finds the engagement ring from Alex on her chain, and Gideon is shocked. He doesn't look triumphant that he's caught her, he looks more defeated. As they're hauling Rune away, Alex intercepts them and tells Gideon to release her because she's the woman he loves. Gideon tells him to leave and says Rune is a witch. Alex shouts that he knew Rune was the Crimson Moth and didn't tell him, says that he helped her free all these witches, and demands that Gideon arrest him too. All of the other Blood Guard officers hear him say this, so Gideon is forced to handcuff him. Rune is brought to the purging platform with Seraphine, and she explains to her that she turned Kestrel in on her Nan's request, not as a betrayal. A group of hooded witches emerge and send spells barreling toward the platform to help free them. Seraphine says it's Cressida leading them, but Rune says it's Verity. Cressida has been casting illusions over herself to look like Verity, possibly having killed the real Verity to take her identity. Cressida/Verity approach, and the illusion is now gone. She slits the throat of someone fleeing nearby and uses the blood to unlock Seraphine and Rune. Verity has been using Rune for 2 years to learn more spells and gain information. Cressida has Nicholas Creed, who is Noah and Layla's father and also the leader of the Republic, on his knees with a gun to his head and commands the officers to drop their weapons and hand over Rune and Seraphine. Nicholas tells them not to listen to her and to fight back. She shoots and kills him, and Layla, who's his daughter, tries to run after him. Alex is solemnly collecting all of these weapons, and when he gets to Gideon, Cressida says that Gideon's going to be coming with them. Gideon says that he would rather die, and she threatens to shoot Layla instead. Gideon steps in front of Layla, and Cressida says that she'll just shoot and kill them both. As she shoots, Alex steps in front of the bullet and is shot. Rune is holding him while he dies, and Alex tells her to flee and to live. He tells her to tell Gideon that he loves him, and he gives Rune permission to use his blood to escape. So he dies, and Rune casts a spell she remembered reading and creates this chasm in the earth, allowing her and the witches to flee. So we end the book with her on this boat with the witches, and she's mourning the loss of Alex, her best friend, and also the life that she left behind, knowing that she can never go back. She also knows that she doesn't want Cressida in power because she believes that she's evil and believes everything that Gideon told her about her. She asks Seraphine to train her to prepare her for what's to come. So that's the end. If you have any recommendations for other books for me to summarize, just leave me a comment below.